A brand new take on the simple platformer games that seem to be all the rage? Capcom had the answer. Released in 1987 in Japan as Rockman, the rest of the world later discovered Mega Man for the NES. Mega Man's character is a humanoid robot creation made by Dr. Light, and his mission is to stop the new creations of Dr. Wily, known as the Robot Masters. Each Robot Master has a unique ability to fight with, and their stages are mostly themed around this power, ending with a fight against them. Every enemy throughout the stages is also a robot of some kind. Now here's the part that was more refreshing. You could choose which stage to go into first. Out of the 6 Robot Masters, you can take care of them in any order you want to, and if you struggle with any of the stages, you can come back later. This kind of design really hadn't been used much, if at all, before. But another cool part of picking your own stages is that after defeating a Robot Master, Mega Man obtains a new weapon that shoots out of his arm cannon, themed around the Robot Master that he has just defeated. He has unlimited ammo from his usual Buster weapon, but once he starts using the Robot Master weapons, there is a limit to be aware of, just like with a health bar. So this is a special power that you gain with each stage, and makes choosing your stage order very interesting. However, each weapon acts as a weakness for another Robot Master when you fight them, so there is an intended order to play the stages in. Nothing to stop you from going in a different order, but the bosses will be a lot harder when you get there. Besides, you'll have to start somewhere with the Buster, so you can start cycling through the weaknesses. Just don't start with Elec Man. Even if you do get through one of the hardest Robot Master stages of them all, the boss will likely make quick work of you if you don't have his weakness. There are certainly positives and negatives about having a weakness order like this. It does mean that bosses are much easier to defeat so that you can complete a level, although most of the special weapons are so strong that they take out the Robot Masters in just 3 hits. On the other hand, the Robot Masters could also take you out just as quickly. Figuring out who's weak against what isn't always simple though, and the whole reason this is so important in the first place is that this game is known for being very hard. The Mega Man series as a whole is pretty popular for its high difficulty, but is it fair? Well, I'd actually say so far in these Robot Master stages, yes it is. Each stage has multiple checkpoints that you return to after a death if you've passed that point in the stage already, and one of these checkpoints is always right before a boss. The live system being used is, well, pretty standard. You get 3 lives before a game over, and if you game over, you'll have to restart the stage, with an option of going back and choosing a different stage. Thankfully, all the previous levels stay completed, so I see it as a fair system. So how about the weakness order? I started with Gutsman, whose ability allows Mega Man to pick up certain big blocks and throw them at enemies. Who's weak to this? Well, Cutman, obviously. Scissor Blades probably wouldn't do so well if they had heavy bricks thrown at them. Elec Man is weak to those blades, a clear connection that can be made because you could cut the electric wires and it would all stop working. Iceman is weak to electricity, and this one is actually sort of logical because water and electricity certainly don't mix, and ice is frozen water. Fireman is weak to ice, well, now that makes too much sense. Now I'm annoyed that fire isn't ice's main weakness too. And finally, Bomb Man is weak to fire. If I hadn't started with Gutsman, he would be weak to bombs to complete the cycle. Alright, not all of those were very intuitive to figure out, but all in all, that's only a minor flaw. One of the important elements of designing any game is making innovative challenges, and Capcom really did succeed at that with Mega Man. It's a high difficulty game, but it keeps you on your toes and teaches you pretty well to have quick reactions. It seems like every Robot Master stage has a very cool, unique challenge, like descending the platforms on the tracks in Gutsman's stage. There will be points on the track where the platforms drop, and you'll have to time jumps over these artificial gaps, and also time the jumps down to the next platform below when they line up correctly. Alternatively, the stages are just thrilling the whole way through. I loved Cutman's stage in particular. All of these Robot Master stages are just designed really well, except for Iceman's stage. The one supposedly innovative challenge is all the slippery ice on the ground. But as difficult as it can be to handle, it usually doesn't impact you much because there weren't many enemies during the big stretches of ice. Other than this, the stage has a far worse case of the disappearing block train than Elec Man's stage had, followed by crossing a pit by using platforms that move at random heights, with robot penguins targeting you. And if the platforms aren't at a good height to jump to the next one, well, you'll be stuck there for longer, and it feels like making one mistake with the penguins is an instant recipe for disaster. I don't mean to talk so negatively though, because it's not like this one stage ruins the entire game. And all in all, it's still a short enough stage and the checkpoints help a bit. Of course, no game is complete without its unique graphics and soundtrack. The graphics were, well, pretty simple, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I felt that they could have done a little bit more for most of the game. As for the soundtrack, Capcom certainly set their intentions for the series. Catchy and pretty upbeat to help the player along. With the first game here, maybe they didn't exactly know where they wanted to go with the music, but they still used the NES sound chip decently enough. So, to this point, I've only talked about the 6 Robot Master stages. But the game isn't just 6 stages long. After defeating Dr. Wily's Robot Masters, Wily himself shows off his powerful eyebrows, and Mega Man follows him into 4 more levels. Here, the player will find some of the toughest challenges yet, which also incorporate the required use of certain powers that have been picked up along the way. Quite often there will be blocks in the path that Mega Man needs to use Gutsman's ability to clear, so you will need to use this wisely because power levels for weapons aren't restored between stages. Alternatively, you could just take a game over between stages like I often did to refill all my weapons. The system allows for that, why not take advantage of it? In the first Wily stage, there is also a tricky section with fire pillars rising and falling, so Mega Man can use the ice ability to freeze them when they're down as another cool use of his abilities. There is also a section which seems to have no way of climbing, so you'll have to use the Magnet Beam. Wait, Magnet Man isn't a Robot Master in this game. He didn't make it until Mega Man 3. Well, I hope you took out Gutsman before you visited Elecman's stage, because behind some of the Guts blocks in the middle of that stage is an essential power that isn't required until Wily's stages. The Magnet Beam forms small platforms in the air to stand on, so this can also be used as a rescue in certain spots, although I was never quite able to pull that off. Now, if you get through a Wily stage, who's waiting for you at the end? New Robot Masters? Dr. Wily himself? Well, after the first one, we're introduced to the Yellow Devil, a notoriously difficult boss fight in Mega Man history, and even all video game history. Alright, I've mostly enjoyed the difficulty up to this point of the game, but now this is getting a little ridiculous. Surviving the Yellow Devil's movement across the screen several times is already overwhelming, and trying to hurt him in the limited time available is insanity. I can't deny the creativity of this boss, but I'm probably going to need many more lives, or an easier way out, and it just so happens that there is one. Are the bosses taking too long and you're taking too much damage from it? Do I ever have an exploit for you? Now, of course, this isn't actually an intended game function, but without it I would have spent way too much time getting through the Wily stages. I avoided using it on all the Robot Masters, but it became very necessary after that, especially when you have to fight multiple of them again within the same stage later in the game. This is the pause trick. You can damage bosses or any other enemy on every single frame using the select button to pause the game. As long as the weapon projectile is still in contact with a boss, the damage is redealt after you unpause the game, so you can make very quick work of the bosses with just a few pauses. I hate that I had to use it, but still, I'm happy enough that I avoided it until the late game. It's just unfortunate that it didn't give me much of a sense of accomplishment at the end, so I'll try not to let it affect the score too much. The main point is, instead, that the game wasn't kept fair the whole way through. Honestly, it's not just the fairness that I'm disappointed with in the Wily stages. In general, the design drops off a little bit, at least after the first one. The second Wily stage to me seems like the attention was focused all on refighting 2 of the previous Robot Masters and finishing with the Mega Man clone fight, with nothing interesting in between. And then the third stage, well, what were they really doing? This stage is actually strangely easy. The fourth Wily stage is where the game is concluded, and this stage is okay, but that's what I would say about it. There's a nice callback to the track platform's challenge of Gutsman, but other than that, the main focus is again just on the 4 remaining Robot Master refights, and then Wily himself. Wily has 2 phases with his machine he uses to attack, and they should be a big endurance test, but again, I didn't actually go through it that way. I don't think I would be able to do this stage and its 5 bosses without using the pause glitch. Yes, you might yell at me again, but I feel like this criticism is mostly justified. It should be an epic challenge, but either way you play it, I feel as though it didn't quite turn out the right way. So Dr. Wily goes down and surrenders like the coward he is, and Mega Man returns home to Dr. Light and his sister Roll. This time he's defeated Dr. Wily's creations, and now I can rest up until Wily decides to create more Robot Masters. It was fun, and it was difficult. It's unfortunate that the challenges couldn't stay that way, but overall I'd say the main Robot Master stages of the game are more than good enough to save the game. A good game, just with some glaring issues that needed to be fixed. Therefore, my final score for Mega Man will be 7.5 out of 10. Mega Man is a very large series of similar games, but it seems to be commonly agreed that Mega Man 1 is the hardest in the classic series, at least out of the games that were released to the whole world. If you enjoy difficulty in platformer games, I definitely recommend it, especially because it controls very well. If you're not quite as interested, I might suggest at least trying the Robot Master stages because there is some pretty thrilling design in there. This game was later available on Virtual Console, and it can also be played in its original form as part of the Mega Man Anniversary Collection and the Mega Man Legacy Collection. It also has a remake on the PSP, Mega Man Powered Up, which increases the number of Robot Masters to 8 to go with the other games in the series. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Mega Man for the NES, initially released in 1987? As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self. Excuse me?